maybe I'm a bit of a dreamer in that way, but I still believe in the American dream. I still think it's possible. In the fiat world, sadly, you're going to have to catch a break to sort of make it. I think in the fiat world, hard work alone isn't enough. But that's why I describe Bitcoin as being the American dream part two, because it's something, as you mentioned about the energy, it's something where if you invest your time and energy and money into this thing does the rest. It's like a concierge service. Can you say Bitcoin?
Button.
Yeah.
Today, I'm excited to welcome Sam and Sam to the podcast. Sam hosts the Sam's podcast, is an ex-software developer, has an MS in UX design, and metaverse diploma from Wharton. Welcome to the Bitcoin Edge, Sam and Sam.
Hi, Paula. Great to be here. Say hi.
Hi.
Can you
Hi,
say
Sam.
Can you say Bitcoin?
Button.
Yeah.
Bitcoin, that's what we like. You're a clever guy.
Now, are you going to say bye-bye to Paula?
Bye.
See you later, Sam.
Good boy. Say bye-bye.
Thanks for coming.
Say bye-bye.
Bye.
And blow a kiss. Good boy.
Bye.
All right, see you
He's
later.
going to be a charmer.
Don't destroy Daddy's microphone.
All right, so that's your co-host.
That's my co-host, and it's a little bit of a challenge having him near the computer and near the microphone. This is my third microphone. He's trashed them, but it is what it is. I like to have him, at least for a minute or two at the start of every one of my episodes. I think it's nice to have him on because there's a backstory about Sam. This is the reason I podcast, and actually he's the person who, I like to say that he's the person who orange pilled me, his arrival into the world.
Yeah, so tell us about that. Why is Sam the one who orange pilled you?
Sure. So, firstly, I heard about Bitcoin first back in 2013. I was working as a software developer. I was living in the Republic of Ireland, right on the border with Northern Ireland. So every day I would cross the border to work. And at that time, it was the time of the Greek crisis. There was a run on the euro. Everyone was wondering, would the Greeks get a second bailout? So the bank stocks in Europe were going up and down. The currency was up and down. So I was earning British pounds. I had to withdraw from the ATM. I didn't have full privileges of banking in Northern Ireland because I was what was called a cross-border worker. So I would withdraw my salary from the ATM, drive across the border, stop at a currency exchange over to euro, and go back to my hometown because my car insurance, my phone, all of my utilities were billed from my euro bank account. And the euro utilities didn't want to withdraw directly from my sterling account because of the currency fluctuation. So I was complaining one day in the cafeteria at work with another software developer, and he said, "Hey, you should buy Bitcoin." And so I went back to my desk and I went onto the computer and I looked it up, and I decided, yeah, I'll put $1,000 into this, and it was $200, Paula, at that time. Can you believe it? And so I looked at it, and at that time, the exchanges weren't really what they are now. The process was I needed to send the money through PayPal to some person, and then that person, I guess they were on chain, right? So they would buy on my behalf. And because of that extra step, this person I didn't know, I backed out. I thought this is some kind of dark web stuff. I'm going to lose my money. So I backed out. And I heard about Bitcoin again after I moved to New York, 2018. I didn't follow through. I heard about it again in 2020, but I was just so busy working in 2020. And it just left my head again. I was aware of the news stories whenever, I guess, when the price would go up, but I really didn't consider it. And then my son was born in the fall of 2023. And I used to sit up doing the night feeds, sit up on that recliner chair at nighttime, the long winter's nights. And so we were obviously both delighted. We're older parents. He's our first child, and we were delighted. We were totally in love with him, Sorry, my throat, actually, every time I say that on a podcast, I can feel the emotion in my throat. It's just such a blessing, But the dichotomy of the situation for me, I think we're all equal these days, and I love equality, but I think when a dad has a child, something, there's a mother-child bond, but I think there's also a bond that triggers in a dad, and it's to do with the old primal need to provide, right? So I felt that big time. I used to look at my son when I was feeding him and I would think, oh my God, what kind of world have I brought you into, and I'm older. And I hadn't really put away too much I had put away enough for myself in retirement, but, I hadn't sort of provided for having kids. And then Sam came along. So I was looking at him and I was thinking, what am I going to do? I need to do something. And I realized pretty quickly that I needed to go all the way out on the risk curve because I was almost 51 when he was born. So anyway, that's how it happened. I would be holding him in one arm. I would have the phone in the other hand. I would be reading books. I would be watching YouTube on the TV. Pretty quickly, arrived at Bitcoin. So I was like, this thing's still around. For the first time, I said, let's see what it is, because with my software background, my tech background, I should have been primed to understand it, but I just never taken the time. So yeah, those long nights on the night feeds, Paula, that's what finally made me do the homework. And I have to tell you right away, it didn't take me 100 hours until I had put some money into Bitcoin. And I would say 2 to 3 days later, I had a chance to speak with my wife, Jessie, about it. And so within 2 to 3 days, we were maxis. So that's my backstory. So yeah, Sam, I quickly realized then too that stacking sats for him in itself may not be enough. I wanted to also provide him, with the education. I feel that education is so important. So the thought just came to me to start a podcast and have Sam as my co-host, so that when he's older, if he wants to step into the podcast, he can. But even if he doesn't want to step in and continue the podcast, he will have a lot of episodes to look back on where he'll get his own education through his dad's sort of curating. So that's kind of where we are and who we are, Paula.
Yeah, that's a great story. And do you have any regrets going back and, well, not regrets, but obviously you wished you bought back then, but how do you deal with that today?
So I'm ultra bullish, and I had George Bodine. I understand you know George as well, and I had George Bodine about 6 weeks ago on my podcast, and George describes himself as the guy that's more bullish than Sailor. So I'm right there beside George, and maybe even a little bit more bullish again. I'm super bullish. So it doesn't really matter. It would be nice today. I was going to put $1,000 in. That would have been 5 Bitcoin. And even if I had taken some profits, let's say I still had those 3 Bitcoin for $600, that today would be worth, I don't know, 350,000. But Paula, it's all relative. It's like, I don't get hung up on that. It's, I haven't had to sleep out or go without food in the intervening years like fiat. I was able to earn halfway decent money. I guess it didn't really inconvenience me too much. I got in when I got in, this is my starting point. I sort of realized pretty early on my attitude was going to be super important to how I move forward. So I didn't want to be moving forward with an attitude of, oh man, look at that guy. He got in 2015. He got in 2017. It doesn't matter. I feel as though I'm in now. As I say, we got in as maxis. We're all still early. We're all super early. And I think I said this in X a couple of days ago, and I say it pretty often, actually. I share it, and it's like shouting into the abyss. It doesn't get any interaction, but I believe it. I think the last Bitcoin will be mined and will be dust before we realize the true value of this thing. Like, I think this thing is the most pristine, unusual. I don't even know, how to describe it. It's so powerful. It's so pristine that I don't think it'll be fully understood for a long time. So we're still early. I'm early. You're early. We're all early. When we look back in 20 years, the difference between 2013 and 2023 will sort of pale into insignificance, I hope.
Yeah, that's a great attitude. And you said you got it within 2 or 3 days. What was it that made you really get Bitcoin? And what was it about Bitcoin that made you go, wow, this is going to be big?
So, well, I guess my background helped. As you said, I'm a farmer software developer, and I love saying farmer. I would need to be very badly stuck for money to go back to being a software developer. I really didn't enjoy it. My preference coming out of a computer science degree was for UX design or user experience. I always wanted to be on the front end. I was always super interested in how people perceive technology, how people extracted value from technology. So I was more interested in how people interact with the technology than I was in the technology itself, if that makes sense. So I guess that perspective, and as you said as well, a couple of years ago, I completed it was an executive education diploma at Wharton. I think the course was called Business in the Metaverse Economy. And at that time, the metaverse was everywhere. Facebook changed their name. Everyone was talking about metaverse. I kind of realized at the time that the metaverse was a little further off than what they were saying. But they had some guest lectures that they would bring in. One of them was the CEO of Snapchat. One of them was they had finance people. So I had some understanding of blockchain and new technologies before I dived into Bitcoin. So then I guess to answer your question, like once I sat down and looked at it and studied it, I guess it was the beauty of the blockchain and like realizing pretty early that it was permissionless but secure. Because sometimes things are permissionless, they can bypass traditional institutions, but they're not always secure. So realizing that this was a really robust network and a really robust network of people around it, and also the fact that it was permissionless, that was my starting point, and then I sort of dived in from there. Yeah, that basic study of the blockchain and figuring out how secure the network is. Like some of the facts, some of the statistics around Bitcoin are almost hard to believe. It's the biggest computer network in the world. It's the most secure. And like people might say, what about Amazon Web Services? They provide cloud computing platforms for most of the world. Bitcoin's a bigger network than that. It's the most secure. So all of those things combined give me, I don't want to say that I got it any quicker than anyone else, but maybe my background did me some favors. But when I got it, and I devoured content. Robin Sayre had just started out with his podcast at the time. So that was a 1-hour episode a day where you got to meet people from an eclectic background, and like some people were they were core developers, and some people were miners, and some people were Wall Street guys. So I devoured all of that information. And I don't know, Paula, maybe investment guys would shirk when they hear this, but as well as my background given me sort of a slight edge, I also had a gut instinct. Once I read about it, I was like, it in some ways seemed like the thing that I had been searching for a long, 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 long time. It just seemed fair. It seemed just. There was a truth to it, and those qualities definitely appealed to me.
Yeah, I love that. And then, of course, it's bounded by energy, and that is what makes it different than all the other cryptos. But I only discovered that later. I came for number go up.
Yeah. So I spoke to Bob Burnett recently, who's a Bitcoin miner. And what Bob's company does, Barefoot Mining, they're a little bit different. So they mine off grid. So they generate their own electricity and they mine. They're not connected. They don't have the same regulations and hurdles to go through with connecting to a network. So, and I said to him, my dad, God rest him, in his retirement, brought a hydroelectric project to fruition. He had been born and raised beside a mill with a water wheel. So all of his life, he was interested in water power, hydropower. So in his retirement, he studied maps of our local area, and he discovered a site that had been missed by all of the big companies. And it had been missed because a river had gone underground for a short distance. And I guess that's why they missed it. But so the fall in the river was actually mostly underground. So he spotted it. He bought the site. He applied for European funding. He went through all of the process. I sat in meetings with him with like the European departments where he had to satisfy their conditions. So I had knowledge of that as well, about the energy component. I should have found this thing earlier, but as you say at the start of the pod, yeah, I've no regrets about it. But I guess all of those things combined from my background meant that I'm super bullish.
I love it. Do you think people need to understand the problem before they really see value in Bitcoin?
Oh, absolutely. George Bodine, another guy I had recently, he actually describes that as well as anyone. George said that people have to have the need. And I like, not to tell George's business, but he says this publicly himself. He's not very good at orange pilling people, and he's had some negative experiences with people close to him. So he had to sit down retrospectively and think about what is this process that we're doing with orange pilling? yeah, people need to have the need. Like in my case, it was Sam's arrival. Despite all of my background, I didn't have the need until little Sam arrived. And I think, yeah, it's a combination of factors. When you're working in the fiat world, and I'm in New York City, let me tell you something. You don't work part-time in New York City. You need to put your shoulder to the wheel in New York City. Unless you have a super high paying job, most people are hustling, working long hours. And you generally come home, get some dinner and sleep, and get up the next day and do it all again. There's not much mental or physical energy left there to sit down and read about something that's kind of, as opposed to a normie, it's kind of questionable. Like it's an alternative world, really. So yeah, I think people in that world do have a problem with just not having the time or the need to find this thing. But hopefully that changes. Hopefully, as Bitcoin becomes more mainstream, people will arrive. But it's an interesting question. So I study the tech adoption curve a lot, the bell curve, and it takes you through from innovators to early adopters and the early majority. And there's chasms between each group, and if you don't move beyond those like chasms, you can stagnate and you fall off, and your tech product, whatever it is, doesn't proceed. So there's differing opinions about where we are right now. I think we're in the early adopter stage. I think most of us are early adopters. To get to that, early majority and certainly the late majority, that's a challenge because that's the mainstream, right? And we're still sort of seen as a subculture or an alternate sort of group in the investment world or in the financial world or the tech world even. So yeah, I think we've got a little way to go first, and I'm not sure what the Bitcoin community can do to drive that forward. My hunch would be Wall Street's coming to meet Bitcoin, and it'll be Wall Street that'll build the products and unleash them on the mainstream public. And I think that's when people. So to go back to your question, people do have the need, but I think it'll have to be served to them through a financial product before they take the. I don't think they're going to take the initiative themselves. I think retail are here pretty much now, and I think they're not going to come of their own accord. I think it'll come via Wall Street sort of financial instruments that people gradually get on board with.
Yeah, it's going to be very interesting. You mentioned that you live with your family in New York City, and you've also said that Bitcoin is the American dream part two. Tell us what you mean by that.
Yeah, well, maybe I'm old school. Like people sort of poke fun at me for saying that, but I still believe in the American dream. The American dream is a beautiful thing, and I realize that the image or the branding of America, especially around the world, and to a certain extent within the US, has been damaged over the past decade or so. But I try to look at what the United States is going back to its original intentions and the intentions of the founding fathers. And the intentions are like, I don't even really view the United States as a country in its own. I view the United States as it came about during a period of time when people were being persecuted. People hadn't access to a better quality of life. So we said, okay, let's restart. And people came. Like, there is no America when you think about it. America is made up of people from all around the world who were persecuted and couldn't make money, and they came here. So I like to think on the States through those eyes. Maybe I'm a bit of a dreamer in that way, but I still believe in the American dream. I still think it's possible. In the fiat world, sadly, you're going to have to catch a break to sort of make it. I think in the fiat world, hard work alone isn't enough. But that's why I describe Bitcoin as being the American dream part two, because it's something, as you mentioned about the energy, it's something where if you invest your time and energy and money into this thing does the rest. It's like a concierge service. If you check into a hotel, you sign the paperwork, you pay the check, whatever it is, you go up to your room, you put your feet up, and the concierge will take care of everything else. I think Bitcoin will. We obviously need to keep abreast of what's going on, but I think Bitcoin will be the realization of the American dream, not just for Americans, but for people all around the world.
Yeah, I love that view. I think it's very positive and yeah, gives people a lot of hope. Hey there! Don't forget to like and subscribe to help me grow the channel. Want to sleep easy? Microseed lets you stamp your seed phrase onto a small steel washer. Buy the device once and use it forever. I love it. It's discreet, precise, and easy to transport. Get yours below. For powerful self-custody with no backdoors, I recommend the Trezor wallet. For peace of mind with collaborative custody, the Bitcoin Advisor is a trusted team who can also help with inheritance planning. Just scan the QR code or use the link below. And check out these super cool Satoshis with over 40 styles to choose from, plus 10% off with my link below. Now, back to the show. You mentioned that you worked a horrible job, but I assume you saved in Bitcoin. So how can others do the same thing?
So this is really interesting, Paula. So when you were introducing me, obviously I had told you it's like when you put your resume together, you put your best foot forward, right? So bachelor's in computer science, master's in UX design, recent qualification from the Wharton School of Business. But last year, I was a stay-at-home dad. Okay, my wife was going to work. We didn't want to put Sam in daycare in New York City. So I stayed at home and I took care of him. So at some point, I realized because we had gone to Maxi right away, we'd put in our savings. Someday I'll tell my story about I often joke with my wife, they should put a statue of us in Wall Street for the jiggery pokery that we did, all legal and above board. But, we did every which thing we could to get as much money into Bitcoin as we could last year. But then I reached the point where I had nothing more to put in. So that's one of the troubles with Maxis, right? If a dip comes, you have nothing more to put in because everything's in Bitcoin. So a job came up in our apartment building, the position of super on the weekends. So Saturdays and Sundays, 8 until 5. And I knew the super. So he suggested to me, he knew I wasn't working. He said, would you be interested in this job? And I said, yeah. So the job entailed, well, first of all, it was handy because I was working mostly in the basement below our apartment. So at any time, if Jesse needed help with Sam, I could come up right away. I was able to come back for lunch. So the job entailed sweeping the sidewalk, cleaning the glass on the entryway into the building. But then the horror of horrors, anyone who has ever lived in an apartment building, you go out and you put your garbage into a chute and you forget about it. It's magic, right? It's gone. It's not gone. There's a room in the basement. And man, oh man, those rooms. So all of the trash falls down with gravity, but then there's a pneumatic sort of a compressor that compacts all the garbage and forces it into, I used to call it making sausages. So all the trash would be forced into black bags, and then you would have to separate the black bags every so often. And Paula, man, I don't want to put anyone off their dinner, but yeah, the smells and sights I witnessed when doing that job. Well, first of all, most apartment buildings in New York City, the basement has cockroaches and mice and sometimes rats. And it's like a journey through the evolution of species. You can see just about anything down there. So it was a rough old job. But look, every day that I went down there, I said to myself, I'm getting paid $379 into my pocket. That's what I got after taxes for the 2 days. The money hit my account on a Friday morning at 10 o'clock. By 10:03, that money was in Bitcoin. So while I was doing that job and the smells and the heat in the summertime, there was no air conditioning. It was 100 degrees, the humidity of sweating. And then in the wintertime, it was frigid down there. Anytime it got rough, I just thought to myself, this money is money that I'm not going to touch for 20 years, maybe more. And I started calculating in my head, and I would listen to sailors' projections. So actually, I was in Prague a month ago, and I listened to Sailor's most recent projection, 21 million in 21 years. And I was like, hang on a minute. And I started counting up how much money I had made from that part-time job in 2024. And it totaled about $19,000. So that $19,000 today is worth about, I don't know, it's worth about 36, 37, 38 maybe. But here's the headline. Going by Michael Saylor's projections, that money will be, because I bought 0.3 of a Bitcoin from that part-time job, and I was able to buy last year when the price was in the 50s and 60s. So the magical figure is 1.6 million. 0.3 of a Bitcoin, according to Michael Saylor, in 21 years' time, 1.6 million. In 21 years' time, I'll be 72. And I hope to live a lot longer than that. If I don't touch that particular little bit of the stack until 21 years' time, that's 1.6 million. The other question, Paula, is what will 1.6 million really be worth at that time? But yeah, that's what I use to motivate myself to do that job. It sort of made me think about work in a different way, because I think a lot of us are very snobbish about our work. You go to a dinner party, what does your husband do? Oh, he's a lawyer. What does your wife do? Oh, she works in, she's HR. And so if you show up at a dinner party and my wife would have to say, oh, my husband crawls through the cockroaches and mice to take out the trash in our building, but it doesn't matter. And I think that's what I learned from that experience. It doesn't matter. Like, we call it a fiat mining job. It doesn't matter how you get it. Just get it, put it into Bitcoin, and sit back and let Bitcoin do the rest. That's what I learned from that experience.
Yeah, I give you a lot of credit for that, because you're right that going down the road, from everything that we've heard from very intelligent and smart people, Bitcoin is going to be a lot higher than it is today. But I think it's a good point that when Bitcoin is $1 million, $13 million, the dollar is going to buy much, much less. I spoke to Jeff Booth, and he says just having some Bitcoin, just having one Bitcoin is going to be enough in this new decentralized free market world. So I'm hopeful, however it is.
I guess that brings up a point. So what I just said about 1.6 million, that's to suggest that you would cash it out into fiat again, right? But I think the longer we're in this thing, we come to realize the reason that they say that little bits, like even 0.1 of a Bitcoin, we may not need to ever sell that Bitcoin, because there will be enough financial products. And who's to say Bitcoin may be a dual currency by then? So the transferring this selling of it back into a fiat currency and then spending the fiat currency, yeah, you might be getting yourself screwed over. But holding the Bitcoin and like maybe even borrowing against it, or who knows what will happen in the future, where you might be able to lend that Bitcoin to someone else through some type of a financial institution and make money out of it that way. So yeah, it's kind of a mind shift to think that we might never have to sell it, and that little bits of it will be valuable in the future. I guess it just depends. It's all valuable. It's just a matter of what your time horizon is, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, one of the things that I focus on in my channel is Jeff Booth says that in order for Bitcoin to survive as a store of value, it must become a medium of exchange. And he believes it will. Do you think that's going to be the case?
Who might disagree with Jeff Booth? I'm not so sure about that right now. You have a problem with that, because Bitcoin is global. There isn't another currency that's global apart from gold, or I guess no one talks about diamonds anymore. When I was a kid, everybody traveled internationally, the rich people with diamonds, right, as a store of value in all the movies. But yeah, the point I'm making is, as long as you have other fiat currencies, I'm not so sure about that. Where we stand right now, I think Bitcoin is, like, Michael Saylor doesn't talk about Bitcoin as being a medium of exchange, right? Michael Saylor talks about Bitcoin as being capital, right?
I'm going to tell you why, though. The reason Michael Saylor doesn't is because his buying MicroStrategy or strategy is on the fiat rails.
Mm.
And the difference here is that Jeff Booth says they're two separate entities. And slowly we are moving over to the Bitcoin standard. And that even Michael Saylor will have to one day choose between fiat and Bitcoin. Yes, he has a lot of Bitcoin. We know that. But when you buy strategy, you are not buying Bitcoin. You are buying a product that will increase in value, but that's presuming that fiat continues to exist. So it will be interesting to see. I will just say that, I interview people from all over the world, and the rest of the world are already using it as a medium of exchange.
Well, that's what I was about to say. Like, I believe in small, localized, circular economies. So obviously, if the person that you're buying a good or a service from is also a Bitcoiner, then absolutely. But how long will it take for the whole world like to have a wallet and to have their own Bitcoin stack and to understand when you pay them in this thing what it is that they hold? Yeah, we're a bit early in that conversation, I think. And like you mentioned, Michael Saylor, maybe I'm contradicting myself now, but I don't think Michael Saylor will have to decide. I think Wall Street is deciding. I think retail has taken this thing as far as we can. I think the next big moves in Bitcoin are being developed as we speak. I look back in 24, 25, possibly the front end of 26. In 10 years' time, we'll look back at this period and we'll say, that's when the financial world, the tech world, the AI world came together and changed everything forever. So yeah, to my point about Michael Saylor having to decide, I don't think he's going to have to decide. I think he's going to ride out the storm until the financial system around him makes the decision, as opposed to him, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. It's going to be very interesting to see how it all plays out, and I think you're right. It's going to take a while. You and I are both Gen X. And you have said that Gen X is underrepresented in Bitcoin. Why do you think that is?
Well, I think it really started with the boomers, right? My parents were the generation before that, the silent generation. And I think most of the silent generation, some of them are still around. My mom's still alive and well. When I go on a FaceTime with her a couple of times a week to let her see Sam, I'll always say to her, "Have you heard anything about Bitcoin?" So maybe in my own way, I'm trying to orange pill my 88-year-old mother. But what I'm trying to say is, I don't think they're going to come to Bitcoin, right? So the conversation really started with the boomers, and I spoke with Bob Burnett about this. Boomers get a bad rap in the States, especially. People look to them as they're incorrectly blamed as the people who broke everything, and now they're holding all the money and the real estate. And it's horrible. People look at them like we talk about them in terms of when they're going to die, when that money is going to be released. I don't believe that. So then the next demographic that people talk about is the millennials, led by Jack Mallers and lots of other people who are creating stuff in this Bitcoin ecosystem. And then we sort of talk about Gen Z. They're old enough now that they're working and they're doing stuff in the Bitcoin ecosystem as well. And then I guess into the future, we reference, is it alpha and beta after that? I think Sam is actually beta. So wow, let me get this right. We skipped the millennials, the Gen Z, and the alpha. He's four generations after me. But anyway, so people talk about the boomers and the millennials, and then there's not much else. And I'm like, hi, we're here. We're Gen X. And you don't often hear people describe themselves as Gen X, or you don't hear them talk about their experiences. And I think Gen X plays a really important role, because our generation, we started out like, I remember the first piece of technology that I saw, apart from a television and radio and stuff like that. We called it the TV game. And it was a console, huge, with a load of cables. And what you got was about 8 pixels on the screen. And you used to be able to play Pong. And like, if you showed a kid today, we were amazed by that. That was high tech back in the day, you know? So we lived through from that primitive first gaming console, Pong. We lived through the development of the personal computer, laptops, personal organizers, Blackberries, things like that. And then the evolution into touchscreen smartphones, tablets. We've like, if you think about the internet, we were here from the start. We were already in the workforce when the internet. So some of us Gen X, I worked for a business where there was no computer system at all. It was all pen and paper ledgers, and you had shelves in the office where all the ledgers from years ago were. So I think we've got something to say. We've seen an entire rollout of one entity before, namely all the technology we use today. But we've also seen a lot in terms of economies and monetary systems. Like I told you, I was born and raised in the Republic of Ireland, and 15 miles from the border. I crossed the border 3-4 times a week, went across the border to go to school. When I got old enough to socialize, I went there to play football. I went there to work. So I had two currencies in my pocket most of the time. I had two wallets, and then I had two containers where I kept the loose change. So we've been through that. And I remember when ATM cards came about, they were high tech at one time. So I think maybe, like you asked me earlier, why you think it was that I got Bitcoin so quickly. I think being a Gen X helped, because we've seen technology that we thought, oh my God, what's this? Is this another thing that I have to learn? And we kind of resist at the beginning. I know I was that way with TikTok. I was like, oh my God, we don't need another social media network. And I kind of resisted it. So we've come through all of that rollout, and we sort of understand what that adoption curve is like, right? Because we've been here from the start of that tech rollout to where we are today. And I think that gives us an edge when it comes to Bitcoin. So we've been around since, Satoshi Nakamoto founded this thing, and here we are today, and we're still working. We're not like retired, we're not gone away. This happened within our working life. And I think that gives us a little bit of an edge. Like I listened to Jack Mallers in Prague, that explosive speech. If I was to criticize Jack Mallers, I would say, hey, yeah, you did have it tough, but guess what? Your parents helped you on the path to where you are today, standing in that stage, criticizing generations of the past. Your parents helped you to get there. And like he talks about being a college dropout, but I listened to his story like it was his father. His father had experience of being an investor, and that's where Jack started out. So he benefited. That's my one criticism of Jack Maller's speech, and maybe of millennials. I think they're a bit too, but we're the link between the two, right? So millennials and boomers are very, very, very different people. And our generation as well, Paula, I think we're referred to as the latchkey generation. We were the first generation that came home after school and maybe mom and dad weren't there, they were at work. And we sort of let ourselves in, made our own, lunch or whatever. If you were lucky enough, you watched MTV. We had a different experience. We weren't shipped off to daycare or childminders. We were just at home ourselves, And yeah, there's you could go further down that rabbit hole. But I think Gen X has a lot to say in the Bitcoin space. But there aren't many people out there saying, hey, I'm Gen X and this is my opinion and I'm basing this opinion on X, Y, and Z. We tend to hear from the boomers and the millennials and nothing from, but you just mentioned two guys, and I think you mentioned Jeff Booth, and who else did we mention? Well, Saylor, I think, is a boomer. I'm thinking maybe on people like James Lavish as well, who are Gen X. So, we've got a lot of important experiences and things to say, but we just don't get, we're just sort of here, but we're like invisible. No one talks about our experiences, but I think our experiences are important.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. I'm going to start pushing the Gen X a little bit more.
Yeah. Yeah. The forgotten generation, I guess you could call us.
Yeah. And you've made some good points about them. How much do you focus on price?
Oh, at the beginning, every 2-3 minutes, I almost had the screen worn out in my phone, and I would panic if it dropped, 1%. And if it went up, I'd be calling my wife and say, hey, it's going up. I think that's a natural progression, Paul, of the longer. I'm not going to try to say that I don't still pay attention to price, but it doesn't have the same emotional reaction as it used to. I don't go looking for the price every multiple times during the day, but when I do see the price, sometimes I'm like, in a month's time, we'll look back and we won't even remember how much it dropped or for what reasons. Even in my short time in Bitcoin, my God, we've been through, last summer, there was the Japanese carry trade. You remember that? Where the price dropped to $49,500. I picked up some of my little stack at that time. But then we had all kinds of different, like the election in the US caused turbulence before we ran up. After Trump's inauguration, the price fell off. What did he call that day in April? Liberation Day? There was about a 15% drop at that time. And here we are again today, overnight. I think people are still trying to figure out why that was, but it's not important. When you zoom out, I used to hear people saying at the beginning, zoom out, zoom out, zoom out. And when you zoom out, Like, I zoomed out this morning, I saw that people were losing their minds about what happened and, oh, is this the end of the bull run? And like, X can be full of drama queens. And so the way I responded to that was I zoomed out to the monthly view. Bitcoin's up 8% this month. So if you'd put your money, well, sorry, the monthly view would take us back to, the 25th of June, not to the 1st of July. But if you had put all of your money on the 25th of June into Bitcoin, today, that would mean you're already immune from inflation for the entire year. 8%, right? So yeah, it doesn't have the same emotional trigger for me anymore. Do I still get excited when it shoots up? Absolutely. And I love Samson Mao when he talks about the Omega candle, and I'm like, man, I hope I'm around to watch that when it's happening. But price isn't like, my conviction in this thing is in the long term. And like, this is not financial advice. I'm a lot of things. I've worked at a lot of things, but I'm not a financial advisor. So this is just my conviction. This thing is going much, 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 much higher. So it doesn't really matter what it does along the way, fluctuating. In fact, the fluctuations are to be expected because I mentioned earlier about Wall Street and Bitcoin have collided, and we're trying to figure out, right now it's like two tectonic plates that are coming together and they're butting against each other. And the Bitcoin people, the people like Saylor and Jack Mallers and Adam Back now, they're kind of wanting to do things the Bitcoin way, and Wall Street's coming at it like, this is the way we've always done things. Look, it's eventually going to fit like a glove. But during that process, just like two tectonic plates, the ground's going to shake while that's going on, and it's to be expected. And I actually think it's healthy because it means like Bitcoin is moving and money is moving and large quantities are moving. Now, if I woke up tomorrow morning and looked at my phone and saw that it was 5,000, well, yeah, I probably would have an emotional reaction, Paula. But no, to answer your question, I kind of look at it and I'm more interested to see what the causes were and analyze them and learn about what's happening, more so than the emotional reaction of, oh my God, I'm going to lose everything or I'm going to be super rich. It doesn't have that effect on me anymore, I don't think.
Yeah. And that's true of people who have been in the Bitcoin space for a little time. But if new people are coming in, I think it's important to remind them that there could still be a 4-year cycle and we could have a downturn, even if it's not going to be as big as in the past. What do you think about the 4-year? Do you think the 4-year cycle continues, or you think we got a lot more to run in this cycle?
My take on that is I think we're going to see a hybrid of, like, people talk about a super cycle and the cycles are broken. Other people are saying, like, Plan B, for example, talks about, the stock to flow model. He believes that the cycles will stay the way they are. I think the truth is probably going to be somewhere in between. My take on this cycle is that the bull run is sort of delayed. And I think it's delayed for multiple reasons. And once that all plays out, I think the cycles will, by definition, be different after this. Like I mentioned earlier, that we're going through this collision. Like that didn't happen before. People forget it's only 19 months ago that the ETFs came along. I mean, we're super early. We're super early. And now we're talking about Wall Street and Bitcoin as we speak, like merging. I mean, within 19 months. Anyway, I think this cycle has changed things because President of the United States is buying Bitcoin. And I see some people online saying, well, no wonder we don't have a Bitcoin strategic reserve yet, because is he delaying that until he, gets his act together first, gets his portfolio together? You have, like, just look at what's going on with the amounts of Bitcoin that are being bought every single day by large institutions. You can't model that. There's nobody out there. Like I read people online and, oh yeah, I worked for 10 years as a market analyst with Goldman Sachs, and very good. Can you tell me what the next 6 months in Bitcoin will be like? Nobody can. Michael Saylor said recently, when Godzilla shows up on the playground, all your models will be broken. And I kind of think that's where we are. I don't think we're adhering to any particular model right now. If we were, people would already be starting to talk about, we're about to enter winter. That's where we should be, right? But we've all sort of become accustomed to the fact that this is more of a plateau before we rise up. because so much is happening behind the scenes. But I don't think, having said that, I don't think you can discount the cycles purely and simply because of the supply, because of the halving. And I don't go along with the supply shock notion, but when the daily amount of Bitcoin is halved, that eventually does have an effect. So you'll probably still see that evidenced in the charts when you look at them. Maybe the cycles won't be as extreme. Maybe this thing matures so that the rises and falls are more gradual over time. But yeah, that's a long-winded answer. I'm just a pleb, and those are just my opinions. You know, what do I know? But my gut feeling would be that we've sort of entered into a new. It's like a hybrid between the people who talk about the power law and then the stock to flow. I think we've kind of entered into a new dimension. I don't think the ride will be as rough in the coming cycles. Saylor talks about that. He talks about the return, diminishing returns over time. So if there's diminishing returns, you would have to think that there's, the drawdowns won't be as great. And especially with institutions, Paula, hodling Bitcoin. I mean, institutions aren't going to come into work one Monday morning and say, "Oh my God, we dropped in price. Let's sell everything." No, they're much more long-sighted than that. So I think that's going to provide more of a platform of long-term holders, which should steady price over time.
Do you invest in other assets?
A little bit. So I'm a tech guy. Stocks, I'm always like looking at stocks and trying to figure out new tech stocks. And I've never bought gold. I'm not going to buy silver. I'm actually very unusual. I have never and may never own real estate at my age. I never have. I have a dream of going out into the woods somewhere and buying land and building a log cabin and that type of lifestyle, but I was never tempted to get on board with real estate. I think I saw the folly of that, especially in 2008 in Ireland. There was a horrific crash. Like, people in the United States talk about the great financial crisis. It was mild compared to what it was in Ireland. We were right in the middle of our first ever period of prosperity. There was a huge bubble. Interest rates were almost zero. Everyone was building. And then the rug was pulled. And we had a huge, they called them the Troika, the IMF, the EU, and the European Monetary. There was 3 institutions anyway that came in, and they just said austerity, austerity, austerity. The government had to, take very harsh measures. What did you ask me again?
Well, you don't invest in real estate, and I
Yeah.
understand that. And you invest in some tech stocks.
Well, it's more of a curiosity, Paula, about tech than trying to make a load of money out of stocks. So, for example, my nephew teases me about a stock. I'll hold it for 6 months and then I'll get fed up and I sell it and then I buy it again and I sell it again. And I guess I have a kind of a conviction that it will become prominent at some stage. It's a small company that holds basically all the patents for voice recognition. I don't know if you know who I'm referring to, and invested a little bit of money in that company 2 years ago. Things like that, like, if they've got all the patents, well, then you would have to think through time if we get these humanoid robots that, they're going to need to recognize voice. I try interacting with Alexa and Siri and things like these, and with my accent, it's always, I didn't understand that. And it frustrates me, So some company's going to come along that cracks that understanding of the human accents and the emotion in your voice as well, maybe in the future. So I guess I'm interested in what companies are doing that. NVIDIA, obviously, I would look at now and again. But to answer your question, no, nothing much. I bought a little bit of Metaplanet recently. Well, recently, a few months ago, because I think that when you have some skin in the game, it forces you to sort of investigate more. But I got fed up with it, and thankfully I sold it before it took a decline. Nothing much, Paula. It wouldn't amount to 2 or 3%.
Yeah, that's really what the question's about.
Yeah.
How much are you in Bitcoin? You're pretty much all in Bitcoin.
Yeah, and like I'll just elaborate a little bit more than that. Last year, do you live in the States, Paula?
Yes.
I thought you lived in the States. So you know how it is in the States. The credit card companies are writing to you all the time with offers, and like, people back home can't understand this. They will send you checks, right? So last year there was a lot of checks. came through my door, I cashed every last one of them. I took every loan, I cashed every check because, and now this is not financial advice. And I'm talking about last year. I'm not sure I would do that now, but yeah, I went all the way out in the risk curve last year. And it worked because I had such a conviction about where we were going. I was cashing credit card checks to buy Bitcoin at 53,000, 55,000. And I was getting 12 months interest free, 15 months interest free. So as long as I made the small monthly payment each month, I basically had 9 months, 12 months, 15 months waiting for that price to go up. I paid back the credit card company, and that little bit of Bitcoin that sits in my stack is thanks Wells Fargo, thanks Citi, thanks Chase. So yeah, I'm all in. And Paula, I spend my time, I lie in bed at night looking at the ceiling. I know every crack in the ceiling because I'm lying there looking at it, I'm thinking, what could we sell? What could we do? There has to be something more we could do to buy more Bitcoin. That's how bullish I am.
Great. It's wonderful. So, how has Bitcoin changed you with all this time thinking, studying? How's it changed you?
I think the reason that I wasn't comfortable as a computer programmer was I was always a very shifty type of, not shifty is the wrong word. I don't know if this is a sort of symptoms of ADHD or something like that, but I was always easily distracted. I was always looking at the next thing. I told you earlier, I'm interested in new technologies. So instead of just coding day after day after day, doing essentially the same thing over and over, I would be reading about the next gadget that's coming out. And I was always like that. From when I was at school, like I would be asked to write an essay on this microphone, and I would go off and talk about recording studios. Like I didn't know where to stop, how to contain the body of work. So I think Bitcoin has shown me, it has taught me how to be more patient and how to be more focused, because I don't look at my Bitcoin as something that I'm going to sell anytime soon. So that getting that into my mindset sort of automatically triggered something that this is a longer term project. So I think, well, my wife may say differently, but I think possibly a little bit more patience. It has taken away a lot of my financial fears. And I've no problem talking about financial fears. Everybody's got them. And in some ways, the richer you are, the greater your financial fears. Because whenever you're rich, your main concerns are you have to work hard to stay rich, right? You have to work hard to protect what you have. One mistake, one bad business transaction. So I had financial fears and insecurities, and I think Bitcoin has eliminated a lot of those. Apart from lying looking at the ceiling, wondering how I can buy more, I sleep a lot easier at night. It's like I said earlier, Bitcoin's the concierge. You check in, you go up to your suite, you put your feet up, the hotel staff are going to do the rest. I look that way at Bitcoin. It may only be at a certain level today, but my conviction is all I need to do is to be patient and to have discipline, and I know where it's going in the future. So that has taught me patience. It has given me a little bit of confidence that I can plan better for my future, and it has taken away a lot of those sort of insecurities about what might happen when I retire or when I'm old. Or yeah, I think those are the main things it has given me.
Yeah, I love that. Do you think there's a spiritual side to Bitcoin, or it could be used as a spiritual tool?
Look, I love everybody in Bitcoin, except actually, there's only one group of people in Bitcoin, and it's where I draw a hard line. I have zero to me. There's Bitcoin, and everything else is a shitcoin. Sorry for the language. So I draw a line at people shilling anything else. But I love everybody in Bitcoin, and I guess that includes the people who talk about the spiritual component. I don't agree with it. I don't see that. To me, it's technological. It's science. Science and spirituality generally don't sit well together. So I think if you come from more of a science background, it's hard to sort of get on board the notion that Bitcoin has a spiritual element. But that's not to say, like, I've listened to some people talk about that, and I will hear them out. It's not as if I'm against them, but look, whatever gives you comfort. If people see it as that's the way I look at, well, you asked about spirituality, but I'm going to talk about religion. That's the way I look at religions. If your religion gives you peace of mind, that's it. It works. So for the people in Bitcoin who see a spiritual connection, if that helps them to hodl longer and have more conviction in it, well, then absolutely. But personally, I'm a spiritual person. I do have my own beliefs, but I don't connect the two at all. It's Bitcoin to me is a technological and soon to be financial network.
Yes, you're absolutely right. I'm going to tell you how it's spiritual for me. Because Bitcoin, when I started saving in Bitcoin, it gave me time to look within. And I was beginning to lose hope in the world. You can have all of these wonderful religions, but if you can barely survive and make enough to take care of yourself because of inflation and whatever other reasons, like you mentioned, it's a rat race in New York, then there's less hope. And so who cares about everything else? But as soon as I found Bitcoin, I'm like, wow, now we got a money that can hold its value. And I had time to think, what do I really want to do with my time? Like you mentioned, you were doing a job that you didn't love. And once you have enough Bitcoin, you really don't have to do that. And with the way the fiat world is set up, many people do jobs that they don't want to do just because they got to survive. But what happens now if we've got a vehicle like Bitcoin that we can save in, that now we can do what we really love doing? So I just look at it as a tool for having a more fulfilling, satisfying life, not in itself making you religious or almost spiritual, but a tool to give you more time to look within.
I can get on board with that. I think, as you know, there are some other Bitcoin's a reflection of life. There's all types of different people that are in Bitcoin. I've heard some people say because Satoshi is, anonymous or gone away, that hey, this could have come from heaven. That's the sort of angle that I can't get on board with. The way you just described it, yeah, I can get on board with that. And I think George Bodine again talks about that really well. He describes like George is such an inspiration. I don't even think George realizes how much of an inspiration he is to others.
And I think he's orange pilled many more people than he thinks.
I think he has, yeah. But when George talks about quality of life, you can he's not just talking about it, you can see it, right? You can see and hear that he's in a good place. So yeah, you're right. If you have that security that frees you up from having to be on the hamster wheel every day. George talks about it. Someone may take up like woodwork. They may. I have considered painting. All my life, a sort of an idea flashed through my head about. I love abstract art, and so a lot of. Sorry, I'm going off on a tangent, but through a lot of my life, a lot of the things that I liked about technology, they didn't merge well with like a career. So I guess maybe I'm a little bit of a futurist, or I have sort of differing ideas about technology and how technology changes society. So at different times in my life, I thought this is so frustrating. There isn't a job title for that type of thought process, right? Or there isn't. I didn't feel an outlet. But recently, I've thought I could just paint. I don't have to put it out through my work or in words. I don't have to, through language express my opinions about technology. I could paint it. It could come out in a different way. And yeah, so when we've said that I'll be at home looking after Sam until he's 2 years old. So he's 2 in October, and I'm going to be going back to work doing something. I was a client success manager. So I changed from being a programmer on the back end to being out front working with clients as a client success manager, account manager, client experience. I'm not going back to that world. Or if I do go back to those roles, it'll be with a Bitcoin company. I don't think I can go back to that fiat VC world. I worked with startups, and it's just, yeah, I'm not going back to that. So whatever it is that I do, to your point about having more time, I may never work full time at any one thing ever again. I may do like I'm talking to someone about a music project, and I'm talking to someone about hopefully helping them with a book. And so I'm having these ideas about art, the podcast I would love to continue with. So that's what I may go back to. And I think that aligns with what you were saying about having Bitcoin affording us more time. I couldn't possibly think about those things if I was working 50, 60 hours a week, in the fiat world. So yeah, I think I can get on board with your spirituality
Yeah,
version of
good.
events, Paula?
Good, because I keep saying I going more to the spiritual side on my podcast, but I have to really feel it. Like you mentioned, like George Bodine, I have to feel it. So it's just a little bit here and there. I just think that, it's deeper than just what we see.
Let me ask you a question. So we've seen a sort of a correlation between Bitcoin and fitness. I'm sure you've noticed it too, right? Is there more to that than just having the time? So when people update their status on X, they'll say, stay humble, stack sets, and lift. And I know Larry Lepard's into CrossFit, George Bodine still lifts. Is there anything more to that than just having the time to do it? What's your...
Yeah, I think there is something more. And I think it's similar. It's now because once you have more hope for the world, and Larry Lepard would be a good example. He was very frustrated. At least he had gold. But once you have more hope for where the world is heading with Bitcoin, now I want to be in shape and healthy to enjoy my time on this earth because I have more time. I think that's the other angle.
Yeah, I guess that does explain it, right? You want to be around longer to see where this thing's going. Yeah, that probably does explain it. But I noticed that connection. Like a lot of people are talking about fitness, especially I think lifting weights. Yeah, I just thought that was interesting.
Yeah. Well, I hope you keep going with your podcast. It's great. Tell us where people can find you.
So mostly on X at the Sam's Podcast, and the same handle on YouTube at the Sam's Podcast. Nowhere else for now. People keep poking me and saying, hey, you should be making shorts and putting them on TikTok, and you should be doing this and you should be doing that. I'm just going to keep going with X and YouTube for now. I don't think I'm going to monetize the podcast. I want the podcast to remain, I don't want to have to be influenced by any outside forces in the guests that I have or the topics we discuss. So I think I'm just going to keep it unmonetized for now. So yeah, I'll keep going on YouTube. I'm on X, and in both places, it's at the Sam's Podcast.
Well, thank you for joining me today. This was a lot of fun.
Thank you so much, Paula, and good luck with your show. I really enjoy it, and you're knocking it out of the park, and I wish you the best of luck in the future with it.
Thank you.
Thank you.